There it goes. So if you would rather not be on screen, please turn your camera off now. Great. So yes, thanks again for joining this evening. All these Fairtrade Fortnight, Big Fairtrade Fortnight get-togethers are a little bit different. And this one, conveniently enough for me, as the campaigns manager, focuses on Fairtrade as a campaigning force. So that's what we'll be talking about this evening. But first up, I'll just share a little bit about what Fairtrade Fortnight is. Probably not new to very many of you, but Fairtrade Fortnight is a special time each year when tens of thousands of people across the UK come together to commit to take action to deliver a fair deal for people too often exploited by our deeply unfair global trade system. Today, millions of people around the world, no matter how hard they work, are still unable to earn enough for essentials like food, clean water, medical treatment, and many other daily necessities of life. And at base, that is the unjust legacy of colonialism and centuries of exploitation of people and planet. And with so many people unable to afford those essentials, communities and countries that produce crops like coffee, cocoa, bananas are finding it increasingly difficult to adapt to the climate crisis that they are already living with every day. Extreme and unpredictable weather is already threatening livelihoods and indeed lives in a lot of the areas in which Fairtrade works. But it doesn't only threaten the future of communities, it actually also threatens the future of some of those crops I just mentioned, so bananas, coffee, tea. And many experts suggest that because of that, some of those products, the chocolate, the coffee that we have every day will become a lot more difficult to find our shelves in future. So that's what I'm going to talk about in the next 25 minutes or so. But we will start, if we move on to the next slide, please, by exploring the reality of what the climate crisis means. And rather than me tell you that, I'm going to hand over to some Colombian banana growers who are going to talk a little bit about what climate change means for them and how Fairtrade is supporting them to take on that crisis. So if I play a video now, I will be doing that.
In the UK, we eat around 5 billion bananas a year. Many of these are grown in Latin America and the Caribbean by smallholder farmers who work on farms, not plantations. Life is very hard for these farmers. The cost of living crisis, lasting impacts of COVID-19 and climate change with diseases like TR4 wiping out crops have caused the cost of banana production to soar, but farmers' crop yields to decrease. These challenges could mean bananas are in danger in the future.
El clima nos ha cambiado. Hoy no podemos predecir como predecíamos antes, por decirlo así, estos viejos. Hoy nos cae mucha agua en unos tiempos, mucha sequía en otro tiempo. Entonces, son retos que gracias al hoy estar en Fairtrade hemos podido tener herramientas para poder luchar contra los efectos del cambio climático.
Fairtrade pays farmers a minimum price, a safety net when market prices are low.
Desde que llegó el comercio justo a nuestra cooperativa del 2011, nos ha cambiado la vida. Ya hemos mejorado nuestro entorno de vida y el crecimiento que tiene nuestra cooperativa también.
Para nosotros Fairtrade representa el apoyo, la ayuda, representa el empoderamiento de nosotros como también productores, porque es un comercio justo, esos precios que nos conllevan a mantener un buen nivel de vida.
Fairtrade farmers also earn a premium, a much-needed additional sum, which they can invest in business, community, or environmental projects of their choice that they would not otherwise be able to afford.
Con las primas de Fairtrade me ayudaron a mejorar la calidad de vida. Antes no vivíamos como vivo ahora. Ya me ha cambiado. Mi casa era, ¿cómo? ¿Cómo le digo? Que más se llovía adentro que afuera.
With funding from UK companies, Fairtrade's producer network CLAC has launched the Productivity Improvement Program, working with farmers to address the triple threat of low incomes, low productivity, and the climate crisis.
El PIB, que es Proyecto Incremento de la Productividad, lo estamos utilizando en 7 países, alrededor de 40 organizaciones, y hemos sido muy coherentes con el manejo del medioambiental. Hemos aumentado la productividad alrededor de un 40%, el ingreso del productor lo hemos subido más o menos también en un 30-35%. Para trabajar también con el medio ambiente, hemos disminuido la huella hídrica en un 32%, así como los gases de efecto invernadero en un 13%.
¿Qué logramos ahí con ese proyecto? Bajar los costos de producción, aumentar la productividad y control de plagas. Al pasar del tiempo, una hectárea de foliar a nosotros acá en la cooperativa Coamat nos costaba 150.000 pesos. Hoy en día una hectárea aplicando estos productos nos está costando 20.000 pesos.
Yo les aseguro que las demás áreas o los otros productores, utilizando el producto PIC, mejorarían notablemente en su producción. Hoy mi producción es mayor, ¿verdad? Hoy mi control de cicatocas es mejor. Hoy tengo una mejor estabilidad dentro de mi plantación.
Fairtrade advocates for a living income for banana farmers and invests in growing and developing programs like the PEP. Together with our partners through Fairtrade sourcing and programs, we will continue to champion smallholder banana farmers long into the future.
Hoy el pequeño productor hubiera desaparecido si el sistema no está acompañando. Un consumidor compra un banano, no solamente, como digo yo, ayuda a un productor. Hay una comunidad detrás nuestra que también la podemos apoyar a través de usted. Agradecido con Fairtrade siempre al ver todo el esfuerzo que hacen porque un pequeño productor como yo tenga oportunidades de vivir.
Well, thank you. Yeah, if we pop on to the next one. Thanks very much. I think really, if you took anything away from this evening, the past 4 minutes is the most important thing to hear. I think that's a really good summary of how the pressures of climate change combined with unfair trade put an awful lot of pressure on smallholder farmers around the world, and also the huge difference it can make when more people choose fair trade, and that's why that is our main focus this year. So just give a little more context on that on a more global scale, I suppose. This is the reality of the climate crisis now. Research is showing that areas where fair trade products are made, including Central America, East Africa, the Caribbean, and many more, are very likely to continue to experience increasing extreme weather, which will negatively affect their abilities to grow crops. And there's just one further example there, also of banana farmers in the Dominican Republic, which a few years ago seen entire crops destroyed by increasingly frequent natural disasters. And that particular group also used their fair trade premium to help power their recovery. So yeah, it can make a huge difference. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Yeah, and I think this is just a really good summary of a quote from Rachel Banda, who is a fair trade sugar farmer in Malawi. Farmers are the ones who feel the worst effect of climate change, and it affects them every day in their work, as you heard in the video. Even though those small-scale farmers in countries like Malawi have done so little in comparison to, anyone in the UK, anyone on this call this evening, to actually cause that climate crisis. And it's a good example as well of Rachel is not just a fair trade sugar farmer, she's also a global climate ambassador for the fair trade movement, essentially a campaigner on a global stage for climate justice. And this photo is when she came to Glasgow in 2020 21 to the COP26 UN Climate Summit, where she was able to get up and speak to political leaders, to businesses, to the media in the UK and internationally about her first-hand experience of climate change, which we know made a real impact on a lot of the people there. And that only happens because Fairtrade is a strong global movement, respected, which itself only happens because people like you are out there every day, and certainly every year around this time, making that point. So thank you for doing that. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, I think this just illustrates the point Rachel was making, really, that the climate crisis isn't fair. We all live with the effects of climate change, but we don't feel equally, and we're not equally responsible. As you can see there, the poorest half of the global population are responsible for 10% of global emissions, whereas the wealthiest 10% of people are responsible for 50% of all global emissions. Or if we put that another way on the next slide, we can look at the historical carbon footprint of the UK is around 1,560 times bigger than Malawi's, but it is Malawian sugar farmers like Rachel that are seeing their livelihoods threatened by climate change right now. So yeah, and if we have to summarize why Fairtrade is talking about climate, some people will ask it's because Fairtrade is a campaign to challenge these type of global injustices, whether that's trade injustice, climate injustice, racial injustice, gender, or anything else. I think there's no bit of this slide if you click on. And yeah, colonial history has shaped this unfair trade system that we live with today. And similarly, it is those centuries of exploitation of people and planet that have caused the climate crisis. And those two things combined, make for a very unjust situation. And that's, again, why Fairtrade exists as a campaign movement to build a fairer future, as it says there. So another issue we're talking about this year, because I think it's front of everyone's mind really, is the global cost of living crisis. And there's a quote here from Hugo Guerrero, a Fairtrade coffee farmer in Peru. That's him pictured on the right. Many prices have increased due to the rise in fuel costs, fish, oils, rice, flour. It's also very difficult on the farm because the cost of living increases every day, and it's necessary to pay a little more to the people who work with us. So with the war in Ukraine, also due to the effects of the pandemic, essentials on the farm like fertilizers, grains, oils have become a lot more expensive. So to move on to the next slide, we'll have a look at how choosing Fairtrade actually helps address some of those issues. And there has been research into this, and it shows that farmers that are members of Fairtrade certified cooperatives report greater economic resilience when bad things and shocks like the global cost of living crisis, climate events happen than non-Fairtrade farmers. And that's not a big surprise, because things like the Fairtrade minimum price and the Fairtrade premium are precisely there to deliver fairer incomes for farmers and workers and to offer them more security. There's also options that are available to many Fairtrade farmers, such as low or no interest-free loans, cooperatives support for their members, and yes, support in training and ways to earn money through other means, so diversifying their income a little bit, which can, as I say, offer more security and extra income. So that's been really important in addressing the cost of living crisis that affects so many countries around the world, not just us. But there certainly is a cost of living crisis here in the UK, and a lot of people may be thinking, can I still afford to choose Fairtrade? And our response to that would be that actually, yes, Fairtrade doesn't have to cost you more. Fairtrade's all about the pay, the protection, the power for farmers and workers around the world. It's not about how much you pay in the shops. And that's why so many supermarket own brand ranges are able to have Fairtrade options. It's why you'll find lots of Fairtrade options in discount retailers as well. And there's a little link on the side there. to a blog that we've been sharing a lot this year, which gives you a breakdown of where to find some good value fair trade options that don't cost you any more, but do offer those valuable protections to farmers and workers around the world. If we move on to the next one, please. Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about what crops could be endangered. We've been talking about that some crops may be harder to grow and products harder to find. So I think we spoke a little bit about bananas there in the video, so I won't focus too much on that. But in short, it's quite a lot of the familiar fair trade crops that we know. And of course, we've all seen in the news in the past couple of weeks that there has been shortages in things like peppers and tomatoes and other salad fruits, which is partly attributable to climate change. And these crops are no different. So for example, within coffee, 93% of Kenyan coffee farmers have reported they're already seeing the effects of climate change that are making things more difficult in a survey we did last year now. And on top of that, globally, experts predict that by 2050, up to half the land currently used to farm coffee may be unusable, largely due to climate change. Looking back a little bit, between 2012 and 2017, a plant disease called coffee rust is directly linked to climate change in that it's becoming more common, caused more than $3 billion worth of damage in South America off their land, which are incredible numbers in a bad way, obviously. And so these plant diseases, unpredictable weather, damage to soil quality are really putting a lot of pressure on coffee farmers and could force businesses to close, making it harder to get coffee on our shelves. As mentioned in bananas, a lot of the areas where bananas are grown are becoming much more vulnerable to extreme weather, which can put under a lot of pressure. And they're also expecting to see a lot more heat waves and a lot more droughts in the next couple of decades, which will put a lot of pressure on banana growers. And additionally, tea growers in India have reported already a lot more droughts and a lot more floods in, not the same time, of course, but and variations of extreme temperature that are affecting tea, affecting the quality and the quantity of tea that they can grow. In fact, I could go on, but in fact, up to 80% of the world's food comes from 500 million small family farms, where people are increasingly facing the worst effects of the climate crisis. And so those earning the least, of course, are those most likely to be unable to continue. So climate change is a huge threat to the future of so many of our favorite foods. And so if we move on to the next slide, I'll talk about one of the ways we campaigned to highlight this year, which was our Endangered Isle campaign, which some of you might have seen on our social media channels, or if you happen to live in London, you might have seen it in real life. But our Endangered Isle campaign, as you can see, was a pretend shop, basically, where people could come in and see at first in the top right there, you can see the empty shelves, which could become a reality if something isn't done about climate change. So sorry, lost my train of thought there. But yes, could become a reality if we don't start paying farmers and workers more and supporting them to adapt to climate change. And then the rest of this shop, as you can see, is filled with colourful and nice and sustainably sourced fair trade treats to show the fair future that could be possible if more people choose fair trade. And got a lot of media attention and lots of visitors popping in, which was great to raise awareness of this issue. You can see our patron Nick Hure popped down as well. If we pop on to the next slide, please. Also just mention we were lucky enough to have a bit of a campaigner reception on one of the days, which was brilliant to bring together lots of our organisations working on these issues, everyone from big charities like the Women's Institute and Oxfam to some children who just a few weeks ago had started a petition, which got about 7,000 signatures, I think, to get the government to include Fairtrade bananas in their free fruit and veg for schools scheme, which was fantastic. And of course, lots of campaigners from all parts of our Fairtrade network. So people coming from Wales and Scotland and all over, which was fantastic to catch up with everyone. So thank you for coming, if anyone is on the call today. And then if we skip on, please. Yeah, and because the good news that we got to share at the Endangered Isle and throughout the campaign is that we can all be part of the solution. And if we go on to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about how we can do that. And you won't be surprised to hear that one of the ways we can do that is by buying and supporting Fairtrade, because with hiring comes farmers can take positive steps to adapt to climate change and to mitigate against its ongoing effects. So to take one example, in 2022, Fairtrade farmers in South America, including those in the Atazi cooperative in El Salvador that you can see on the right, chose to use their Fairtrade premium funds, which they can decide to use any way they like, to plant hundreds of thousands of trees, 300,000 trees in 6 months across South America. And that, helps protect the environment, of course, take on climate change, but also protect local biodiversity and protect soil quality and the different crops they grow. It's a really positive thing to do. And Fairtrade Premiums also use a range of other positive environmental projects, including clean water programs, crop diversification, and lots of other things. And worth mentioning, the Fairtrade standards also include lots of environmental protections, including promoting biodiversity, preventing water waste, minimizing carbon emissions. So you can be confident that Fairtrade products you buy have been grown in line with those standards. And of course, the other way that you can support Fairtrade is to continue campaigning. If you've joined our particular campaigning, Big Fairtrade Get Together, you probably already do this. And there's so many different ways you can do that, everything from signing petitions, as you can see in the top left there, with over 30,000 people signed to support our COP petition, to support the farmers and workers who came to Glasgow and then came to Egypt to speak up there, which is really important in showing that mass support in this country to politicians. And lots of campaigners have also met directly with their MP to make that point in person, including the Newcastle group on the top right there, meeting with their MP in the summer during Great Big Green Week, are just sharing things online. Almost 10,000 people every year will share some Fairtrade content online. And when you think that may be seen by 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 people, that really increases the amount of people hearing about Fairtrade and therefore choosing Fairtrade, especially if they're hearing about it from someone they trust rather than just an organization like us. And of course, we've got our hundreds of Fairtrade communities all over the UK, towns, villages, cities, that really make Fairtrade part of everyday life in their community. And that's so valuable. And you can see the Newry Morning Down group there beside their sign, but there's so many, and it's been great to see over 600 events taking place this Fairtrade Fortnight. It's been fantastic. And a quick shout out to our Fairtrade schools there, which are a really important part of our Fairtrade network. And again, loads of events, loads of really high quality conversations that they lead on Fairtrade. Okay, if we move on to the next one, please. Yeah, so just before, I'm going to hand over to all of you really in a moment, and to get some of those highlights of what's been going on around the UK. But just before I do that, I wanted to share one final story of a Fairtrade farmer and their experience of climate change and their experience of why choosing Fairtrade is important. As unfortunately, we don't have a Fairtrade farmer on the call this evening, but this is a story that some of my colleagues gathered, having spoken with Odessa Michelle Grant, who's a Fairtrade coffee farmer in Honduras. So we'll start her story. It's back in 2020, and like many of these stories, it has a really difficult beginning, which is that Honduras and her community experienced 2 hurricanes that year, which caused considerable loss of life and also wiped millions from the Honduran economy. So Odessa's coffee growing community was severely and negatively impacted. Just one fellow farmer in her cooperative estimates that they lost 7,000 coffee plants to the storm, which obviously is a huge impact on their ability to earn. And scientists directly linked the intensity and severity of these 2 particular storms to climate change. And all models suggest that in future, storms will continue to be stronger and therefore more damaging. Drought is also predicted to be a real challenge in future for farmers like Odessa, and that's predicted to increase. We move on to the next one. Just an example of another member of her community, Lourdes Lopez Faquez and her daughter Sadia. And this shows one of the villages where landslides, which we might forget, but they are the storms often cause landslides, which cause more damage to farmland, but also damage to houses. So 60 houses in her village were made unlivable by this storm. So if we move on to the next one, Odessa, 2 years on, Odessa's community continues to face huge challenges due to climate change and the legacy of these storms. As I mentioned, they damaged the quality of soil, they've made farmland unusable, and there are a lot of food crops destroyed, as well as the coffee that they use to generate income. But through Fairtrade, they are making efforts to build a sustainable future. Like all the farmers we've mentioned, they've used their Fairtrade Premium to plant shade trees, and that helps protect the crops, improve soil quality. And the cooperative that they are a part of, the Fairtrade Cooperative, has also offered out training on how to best use those trees and other resources to protect the land in future. And most importantly of all rebuilding efforts and all these training measures cost money. And Odessa's cooperative has been able to offer more support directly because of Fairtrade sales. So that's why it's so important, in short, I suppose, to choose Fairtrade and encourage others to do so, because it can make the difference between these farmers being able to continue or not being able to earn enough to meet their daily needs. But Odessa's not just interested in restoring life to how things used to be, she also wants to build a fairer future. And many Fairtrade farmers do this. They use the power of Fairtrade to campaign for change in their local areas. Odessa in particular chose to challenge common land ownership practices that typically restricted women's ownership of land and property. And I'll just share a bit because she shared her story, so I'll more or less read this out to you just to make sure I get it right. But Odessa is quick to say that she has always worked closely with her husband on their coffee farms, but a new process that allowed her ownership of parts of the farm has given her and many other women farmers more control over their household income and many other aspects of their business. And a direct quote from her is, "The process has already made a big impact in terms of practical dependence. It's a really radical change. Women deserve power and ownership and independence. We work hard like the men." And for us, the election of the first woman president recently in Honduras was a powerful symbol of the changes that we are making happen. And this shake-up of traditional land ownership means that Odessa and her fellow women in her cooperative known as Cocosjol, it offers them more power, more independence, and particularly at this moment of climate crisis and cost of living crisis, more income. Fairtrade has supported the legal processes through the cooperative, which Odessa belongs. It's paved the way for Odessa to take a seat on her cooperative board, which has helped inspire other women to come together. And they've now begun marketing their coffee as an all-women grown coffee specialty product, so specialty coffee, which can offer greater income again. Excuse me. And this is a big part of fair trade. Women's rights and gender equality, like the environmental protections I mentioned, labour rights, and of course requirements on fair pay, are core parts of the fair trade standards. With fair trade, farmers like Odessa are able to protect the future of these foods and crops that we know are endangered, in part by making it possible for women to fulfill their farming potential. So when we choose fair trade and when we campaign with fair trade, we're choosing to stand with farmers like Odessa. And with around 1.9 million fair trade farmers and workers around the world, there's a lot more good that we could do if there were more people choosing fair trade, and a lot more campaigning success that women like Odessa could have. So if we move on to the next slide and final one before I move on, just thought worth highlighting a few of our fair trade farmers who have campaigned for change in various ways. So going right to left, I'll start with Ines Zahiri on the right, who actually have a chance to hear from in our final Big Fairtrade Get Together on Saturday. So I'm sure someone can put the link in the chat at some point to sign up for that. But she will be speaking at our Fair Trade and Climate Justice Big Fairtrade Get Together, as she was at COP27 and spoke powerfully about that need for climate justice and her direct experience as a tomato grower in Tunisia. She's also a member of the Fairtrade Africa board. So yeah, do tune into that one. Then in the middle, you can see Bismarck Kapabaiti, who came to the UK in the previous COP UN Climate Summit in 2021. And he's been training our cocoa farmers as native Ghana in agroforestry technique, spreading the word about the importance of sustainable, environmentally friendly techniques that can increase income and protect the environment. And Bismarck was such an impressive campaigner. He was challenging the UK Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, to come and meet him on social media after he committed funds to support cocoa farmers tackling deforestation. It's exactly what he did. And yeah, he even became a lead figure in last year's Fairtrade Fortnight. We even saw his face carved onto a Yorkshire hillside, which was great. And finally, this on the far right is Merlin Preza, who's general manager of a coffee growing cooperative, Prodicop in Nicaragua. And that's one of those cooperatives that has planted an awful lot of trees as part of that initiative in the past year to plant hundreds of thousands across South America. And they alone planted 154,000. And she said, we did this because we're aware that taking care of the environment is a very important issue for our health and for our community. Great. Okay, and if we move on to the next one, yeah, now it's over to everyone else, really, and I can stop talking for a while, which would be nice. As I invited people who signed up to this to share what they've been doing at Fairtrade Fortnight, as I think it's really great and inspiring to hear what different Fairtrade campaigners are doing all around the country. So if we move on to the next one, and oh, I think I've got some names, and I saw some people in the chat already. Oh yes, but before we do, just because I know I don't think we have anyone from a Fairtrade school on tonight, so I just want to highlight, there's over 100 events, I think, happening in Fairtrade schools, and there's really creative, there's crafting, there's cooking, there's art and poetry competitions, there's link-ups with local community groups and businesses, so just to acknowledge it's really, really valuable, brilliant stuff in the schools. And actually, similarly, on the next slide, I believe I've highlighted a few universities, as again, they often do really fun, really creative stuff that engages huge numbers of people. You know, some universities are really big, and there's been several dozen of them at least getting involved this year, selling Fairtrade cotton, running events. So we've got Surrey, Plymouth and Edinburgh there, but also Leeds and Derby and all sorts of places. Great. So now I promise I will hand over to someone else. And if you are on the line, I'll hand over to Mark from Gosport. Are you about?
Yeah, I'm here.
Lovely.
Happy to talk about what we're doing.
Yes.
Middle picture in front of you is a central thing in Fairtrade Fortnight for us. It's the mayor. We have a mayor's tea party, and the local MP comes along to that. And this year we invited quite a lot of the green groups, the environmental groups in Gosport, to take part in Great Big Green Week, because we wanted to show that we've got common ground in terms of climate change, how it affects us, and how it affects the producers in different parts of the world. Also, another picture there is of a local youth group called Level Up. They're volunteers, young people who get together. They've supported a few of our events. At this year's Mayor's Tea Party, we had 8 or 9 local councillors, because Gosport has been a fair trade town since 2008. And there was some really interesting conversations to be had. Our MP, who's on the left as I look at her, Caroline Dinage, she spoke about women's rights and what women can actually achieve by being empowered by fair trade. That was really interesting to hear that from her. We've also, this year, we tried to target different groups. We're actually, tomorrow I'm going to a fair trade art exhibition in a fair trade school in Gosport. We've given them some support over the past couple of years while they've been on their fair trade journey. And we also this year went to a place, Community Hub in Gosport. It's one of the libraries that's closed down. Lots of libraries have been closed in Hampshire due to cuts. And we went to their Senior Moments group and also to their sewing group to talk about fair trade cotton. So the Senior Moments, we got them to try different kinds of fair trade coffee, fair trade chocolates, that kind of thing. So it's been quite a busy fortnight for us. We were in one of the local co-ops today, talking to customers of one of our local co-ops. And we've obviously had quite a lot of support from the co-ops in terms of raffle prizes for the raffle at the mayor's event and that kind of thing. So we try to, because we're quite a small number, we try to link up with other organisations that are already meeting to try and spread the message as far and wide as we can. We even tried to get into Lidl this year because, as you pointed out, Lidl have got a fantastic supply of chocolate. Their staff wear fair trade uniforms. They did have their own fair trade display up this year, and they featured it in their magazine. So, yeah, that was progress. We'll try to get in again next year, but that's what we've been doing.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you, Mark. And yeah, really good point around linking up with our groups as well. I think that's a great idea. We can move on to the next one, please, just where we've got a few to get through. And apologies, I think I'm running a little bit behind. But if we go on to the next slide, there should be Kat from Aberdeen. Are you on the line?
Hello. Okay, I have I've written it down so I don't forget everything. So yeah, I've come onto the group as a council rep, and during lockdown. So we're really trying to transition from an online to getting out, which we started last year. So this year we have had quite a lot of activities going on. So myself and the chair from Aberdeen for a Fairer World, we went to an interfaith group and did a chat. We did the banana split challenge. I don't know if anybody's aware of that game, but it was different cultures coming together and deciding how much we're getting paid. Really challenging, really enjoyed it. And we also looked at, the decision making, we're choosing fair trade products, cost of living, and just challenging on things that not everything's black and white. There's a lot of grey areas and requires a bit more thinking. So that was really interesting discussion that we had. We did a fair trade online cafe with Aberdeen for a Fairer World and Aberdeenshire as well. We've got a few online cafes throughout the year. So this one was on the Aberdeen University research with Transform Trade regarding the impact of the pandemic on factories in Bangladesh not getting paid. We couldn't get the professor lecturer who did the research, but we did get Transform Trade to come and talk about their work. And we have a local lady who has a website, Repair What You Wear, really amazing lady, talking about make, do and mend type things, talking about textile fashion, really, again, really fascinating discussions around that. We're working with the co-op with some stalls. We got another fair coming this weekend. I did a coffee morning at work, which the council building is shared with Police Scotland, so we got a lot of bobbies around having cake and coffee and lots of discussion. So that was good fun. And then we've got another coffee morning with a Kirk Centre this weekend, and Northlink Ferries. So they're one of our example businesses. So they do quite a lot for Fairtrade. So they have put a percentage of coffees during Fairtrade Fortnight sold on the ferries is going towards Fairtrade funds. So that's super fantastic. And basically, I mean, I've got Shire and city activities in here because we're trying to just kind of collaborate more, support one another. And yeah, just build that sort of community in the northeast. I see northeast and Orkneys, because Aberdeen's connected obviously through the ferries, so it's really nice just to kind of keep building those relationships and supporting one another. So yeah, that's what we've been kind of focusing on. So lots of little things, just yeah, getting out and seeing. Oh, and so we've had Aberdeen University Student Union. They've been doing things this week, and Scottish Fairtrade Forum gave them some funding so they could hand out free bananas. I was lucky. I managed to win some coffee from Cafe Direct. So we would hand out free coffees for them. So that was really good. And they did film stalls, debates, that kind of thing as well. So we had a real mix of folk throughout the city.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's such a diverse range of stuff going on, and so many different people you've got in there, from like Transform Trade to local people doing Make, Do and Mend, and the businesses. Northlink Ferries are such a good example. I think they have Fairtrade cotton uniforms as well. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing all of that.
I have to say, I was just cheeky, and I just emailed them one day and said, "Could you come and help us?" Because we couldn't get our speakers. So sometimes it's worth just being cheeky. If you don't ask, you don't get. So that's what we did, and they were brilliant. So yeah, go for it. That's what I say.
That's great advice. Thank you. Yes, and sorry I forgot. Thank you for putting it in the chat, Mark. I did ask some of our presenters to give a bit of trivia about their local area, and Mark has Gosport trivia. What's the connection between Gosport and a duck house? So Elena's answered MP expenses. Is that what you're looking for, Mark?
Yeah, it's correct. 2009 MP Peter Viggers resigned. He claimed about £1,700 for a duck house on his estate. The ducks didn't like it, actually. They never used it.
That's great. Yeah, well, I'm sorry I meant to announce that competition, but yeah, we're going to offer out a free Fairtrade chocolate for that. I'm not sure you can get it, Elena, as a member of staff, but maybe I'll buy you a drink next time we're in the office. But if we move on to the next one, please. We have Brenda from Wolverhampton. Are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm here.
Could you tell us a little bit about what went on in Wolverhampton this year?
Of course, with apologies from our chair, Julia Farrell, who is unwell this evening. They are her images, and I will do my best to speak to them. First of all, addressing the image which is on my right, we have campaigned in Wolverhampton for a long time to have signage around the city to say that we have been a fair trade city since 2004, and it's been a bit of an uphill struggle. But this year we have got the electronic signage around the ring road, which comes on with other little messages as well, but we are there. And I was delighted that a friend in Sidmouth sent me an email this morning with a picture of the signs that are on my road. So that was pretty cool. So we're trying to get the message out to Wolverhamptonians really, but it seems to have gone further afield as well, which is brilliant. The image on the left, we've joined up this year with the Wolves Foundation. They have joined the Fairtrade Partnership, and they do a lot of work in schools and have joined our schools officer and Bickley. For many years, we've run the art competition, as I think has been suggested initially by the Fairtrade Foundation, and run an annual art competition for schools. Well, this year it was done a little bit differently with the Wolves Foundation providing support. And we asked children to provide a Fairtrade mascot for the city. They had over 80 entries, and they were all taken to the Molineux Stadium, which is a bit of a winner for the children. The foundation have put together an education package, 6 units, but it all culminated last Wednesday, actually, at the Molineux. And then we had our civic reception, which is linked to that event. Every year for many years, we've had a civic reception, like one of your previous speakers mentioned, where the mayor invites people in. We've decided to make that a children's event to get them involved in civic life and see how that sort of thing works. We regularly get one MP and leaders from the faith communities, and several councillors have been very supportive. Rotary provide grants so that we can purchase prizes for the children, and that's a big event. A new thing this year is that we invited the music school to provide some entertainment for us, and they were fantastic. The jazz big band came along, and the challenge was to find some music that linked into Fairtrade, and they did say that, yeah, their pieces did. A bit tenuous, but it was okay. Something that isn't featured here, but was very exciting and has happened last week and this week, is that we were invited as a partnership to offer a Zoom presentation to Collins Aerospace, which is a large company in Wolverhampton, as they are looking to up the ante in their company for fair trade. And our chair, Julia, has presented the Zoom presentation. I went along to their site with a fair trade stall from the Wolverhampton Fair Trade, which sits in the partnership as a community interest company. And there's a lot of interest from employees. So hopefully we've gained some ground there.
Yeah.
Just ever so briefly, schools involved, churches involved, a lot of stuff going on.
Fabulous. No, that's a wonderful summary of what I know has been a lot going on. I follow you on Twitter, so there's a lot happening, isn't there? And yeah, such like some of the reasons we want to share these things is, you know, it's good to take inspiration and like link up with local football team and a big employer such, yeah, fertile ground potentially there. Do a lot of work, I know. Brilliant. Yeah, I think we've got 2 more, so if we move on to the next one, please. Oh, and yeah, if you've got Wolverhampton trivia,
sorry,
please put in the chat.
I pressed the wrong button there.
All right. Yeah. Do you have a fun fact about
Yeah, I'm just writing it in.
Oh, okay, cool. Great. And while that's happening, I can hand over to Mike from High Wycombe, if you're in the room.
Hi, Stefan. Thank you.
And if you want to start with, I know you have a fact about High Wycombe, so if you want to throw that.
Yes, the trivia question is at the High Wycombe local mayors, they have had, and since the Elizabethan times, an event that goes on in May, which no other English town or city has. Do you know what it is?
Put your answers in the chat. First one to get it right will get a chocolate bar.
Right.
Now you can continue to present.
Okay. So what we've done this Fairtrade Fortnight has been probably advanced more than any other. You can see that there's a picture image on the left, which is a cake, and the cake was baked in recognition of 4 years of a High Wycombe Grecia Fairtrade Town Celebration Partnership. So we've linked the towns together, the mayors together, two schools together, Highcrest Academy and the Liceo Experimental Bilingüe de Grecia in Grecia. We also have linked two companies together, Co-op Victoria, which is the largest fair trade cooperative in Costa Rica, something like 3,000 farmers, workers, sugar, coffee, and now cocoa as well. And soon to be hemp. They're growing hemp for clothing. So this was produced by the mayors, and as you can see on the image on the right, we were launching not just a fair trade plaque, which cemented the Wickham Fair Trade Town Mayors partnership, but you can see there that they're advertising a coffee which we had imported into the raw beans imported into this country to us, and you see there the guy on the left of the mayor, that's Matt Hussein. That's Arif Hussein. The guy on the left is Wayne Katsia. He's the owner of a micro roastery, and they experimented with some of these beans. Wickham Fair Trade had roughly 100 kilos of coffee, raw green beans flown over from Costa Rica, and Roast Lab roasted them in different batches, different tastes, and we got an ideal blend. And this is single origin coffee, and that is why Ambassador Ortiz, who was on the right from the UK Embassy of Costa Rica and a major supporter of ours, he was there to launch the coffee. And in fact, that even before you see the mayor holding the coffee bag, a coffee bag was sold to a coffee aficionado online in Reading. So this is going to be made available through Roast Lab's online website. It's going to be available in 4 or 5 outlets in and around High Wycombe, and we're going to advertise it, and we're going to sell it at Fairtrade stalls, a big pan mill event coming up in May, and we're going to sell it informally as well, friends, family, word of mouth, etc. The coffee has scored a huge, has got a huge quality and cupping score, and we think it'll sell itself. So that was a major coup, and the plaque was presented to the mayor, who in turn presented it to the school for their amazing work that they've done. So we're all together, and we've made this link, we've deepened it and strengthened it throughout those 4 years.
Oh, that's so fascinating to hear about it, and yeah, I'm sure it was an awful lot of work, but yeah, the outcome is just fantastic. All aspects of that from the
it was personally rewarding, but sometimes it felt like nailing spaghetti to the wall. But
yeah,
it was getting all these organizations together, but they all responded. And
yeah,
when you've got people who listen to you and share your views and provide some excellent other ideas as well, it's we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, really.
Yeah, no, brilliant, great summary. And yeah, well done to the person in the chat who got traffic lights from Wolverhampton, by the way. Yeah, keep the answers coming, as we've got one more, I believe, to share on the next page. And this is, if Sue is on the line, would you be able to give us a quick summary of what has been happening in Portsmouth? Apologies, I couldn't find too many photos to illustrate this. So
I'm sorry, I should have sent some in. Okay. My bit of trivia, which you might like to think about, is what percentage of bananas come through the port of Portsmouth? Guess is in the chat, please.
Yes, please.
The one clue is that it is rather a lot, and so we've had something of a banana theme going through our week. As it says there, the City Museum and Art Gallery has had a banana week, so you get a banana when you buy something in the cafe, and there's banana trail and posters up and so on. We've also had some bananas to give out at a number of events. We've been at an International Women's Day event today. We had a Fairtrade breakfast at the cathedral with bananas and pancakes. We've got more for, we had more at a meeting of a local sort of international group. So we've sort of been taking them to a number of areas. We've also got involved with a reception with the Lord Mayor, which is on Monday, a coffee morning with the Lord Mayor, really. And we're really happy that we've managed to get huge posters around the city and also show some of the Fairtrade films on a big screen, which is in Guildhall Square. So we've done some work with churches and schools as well, and we put quite a lot of emphasis on getting information into things like diocesan newsletters and so on, so which have got a pretty big reach, and getting it into the local paper. So I think that's us, really.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant summary. And Jeff, I've seen
And
some.
has anybody guessed the right amount?
Yeah, I think just before we finish up, we'll probably run through the correct answers. So yeah,
Okay.
Sue, if you could give the correct answer to your trivia.
50%.
50%, great. Well, I'll have a look at whoever was closest, and you'll get a bar of chocolate in the post. I'll have to work this out after the meeting, but I promise it'll be within a week. Who else have we not got a trivia answer from yet? The Aberdeens, maybe? Kat, could you tell us how many Aberdeens there are?
Joe got it right. Sorry, Joanna, 30 Aberdeens across the world.
Yeah.
We get around.
Excellent. I think we've had the Wolverhampton was traffic lights. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Very good. I don't think we've had the High Wycombe fact, which is a difficult one, but it's good.
Yes, it's unique. In May, when the mayors change over, they're only allowed to serve a year. They're weighed, the new mayors are weighed, and then they're weighed again after a year to see if they put on any weight. And this has happened times. The idea is, have they grown fat in that year? And the implication is, have they been a little injudicious in sort of lining their own pockets, maybe? So that's the reason, and I think it is still unique. Every new mayor is weighed and then weighed at the next time when they hand over, and if they put on weight, then it's recorded.
Questions are asked.
Questions are asked. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well, good to clear all that up. I'm just having a look if there's any other questions, maybe more Fairtrade related questions in the chat that we haven't got to. I'll just have a look at these. But if anyone has a question, we've got a minute left, but and wants to unmute and just ask it, that is fine at this point.
Hi, Stefan. I've got a question. Is Fairtrade, I suppose globally, are they seeing a drop in farmers just like packing it in, or you know, they're not able to sell anything, so they're just feeding their families type thing? Is there quite a lot? Have you got a figure for that?
I don't have a figure, to be honest. I know it is a pressure, as we mentioned in the presentation. One of the goals of Fairtrade and the goal of the minimum price really is to make sure it's always you're not losing money by producing the stuff you're producing. So Fairtrade is a protection against that, but no doubt it's still challenging. And yeah, as producers have joined and leave Fairtrade at different points, it's hard to say exactly. Give a firm figure to that one, I'm afraid. But yeah, it is a pressure, but very much the goal of Fairtrade is to kind of stop that happening. Cool. I think we are just about at time now. If there were unanswered questions, we'll try and pick those up on email, as we'll be sending out a recording of this probably early next week. And all the Big Fairtrade get-togethers will be available online. So yeah, thanks very much for joining, everyone. Especially thanks to the people who joined and spoke about their experience Really enjoyed hearing about it. Really enjoyed your trivia. So thank you very much for your time. There'll be one more Big Fairtrade Get Together on Saturday. Links in the chat there if you want to sign up. And you can visit our website to find out all ways to get involved in the remaining bits of Fairtrade Fortnight.
Oh, can I just ask something? Sorry.
Okay, sure.
I got an email about a craft session that was taking place Monday online. But the links don't work. I've had 2 emails and the links don't work. They take you straight to a Zoom instead of the registration.
I think I saw your email actually just before this.
Okay.
I think that was a session that happened a few months ago. So I think that was the email, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was this coming Monday. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
Sorry about that.
All right, thanks for answering that anyway.
No worries.
It was a good session, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so yeah, I'll be in touch early next week, but until then, have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of the Fairtrade Fortnight, and thank you all very much for coming.
Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Joe, I suppose if I stop the recording, it will save, won't it? In my computer. Yeah, okay, I'll do that.